and local emergencies pursuant to Minnesota statutes, Chapter 12, and other laws. Further attendance of the meeting by any member of the city council, city staff, or the public at the regular meeting location of the city council chambers is not feasible due to the COVID-19 pandemic and closure of City Hall to members of the public. As a result of the foregoing, the special city council meeting will be conducted solely by telephone or other electronic means as provided in Minnesota statutes 13D.021, and no in-person meeting will be conducted in the city council chambers. I think it is important to recognize that using a video conference is not as good as an in-person meeting, but it is necessary. Under circumstances, we are doing the best we can to maintain transparency and due process. I would appreciate everyone's patience and cooperation as we work through this meeting. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic
for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God, indivisible,
with
liberty and justice for all.
For all. Great, thank you. Seeing that the meeting is held remotely, I'd ask Clerk Flatten to call the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn.
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch.
Here.
Councilmember Balsonic.
here,
Councilmember Liefeld.
Here.
Councilmember Lund.
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. Let the roll reflect that Councilmember Brox is absent. Council members, could I have a motion to approve, or could I is there any corrections to the minutes from the meetings from the regular meeting of June 1st and the special meeting of June 9th? And they are approved. Comments from the audience? For right now, any comments from the audience, we have options for comments that have been emailed prior to the meeting, as well as interactive featured during the meeting. For the email comments, they have been forwarded to the city council and their receipt is acknowledged. Please recognize that items not on the agenda will not be discussed this evening. We ask the attendees to use the raised hand feature and they will be invited to speak one at a time. I want to remind everyone that the public comment period is not intended for any intended dialogue. Anyone here that would like to address the council at this time? Council members, are there any council items to be considered? I'd like to add to administration a number 5, and that is a contract for the interim financial services. Is that okay with all of the council members? Clerk Flatten, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Vaughn.
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch.
Yes.
Councilmember Balsonic.
yes,
Councilmember Liefeld.
Yes.
Councilmember Lund.
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. So again, that item will be added to administration number 5. Consent agenda, council, I would accept a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Moved.
Councilmember Fulch.
Yep.
Seconded by
I'll second it.
Councilmember Balsonic. Any discussion? Clerk Flatten, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn.
Aye.
Councilmember Fulch.
Yes.
Councilmember Balsonic.
Yes,
Councilmember Liefeld.
Yes.
Councilmember Lund.
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. The motion prevails. Awarding of contracts. Award of contract E21 First Street, East 21 First Street Water Quality Improvements. Tonight we have with us Public Works Director Nick Egger. Welcome, Nick.
Sorry about that. Had to unmute. Thank you, Mayor Fassbender, council members. Tonight, for your consideration, we have a resolution awarding a contract for the East 21st Street Water Quality Improvements Project. This is a project for which the city and Vermilion River Watershed were able to obtain a nice grant funding amount through the Minnesota Board of Soil and Water Resources. We had 9 bidders on the project, with the lowest bid coming in from Minnesota Dirt Works in the amount of just shy of $185,000. This is a project that has several nodes, if you will, that are spread out along East 21st Street, where various water quality improvements will be installed. And the contract award falls in line with the budgeted amount that we had for the project, which was a little bit less than $240,000 overall, which includes engineering, design, and inspections, and various soft costs that go with managing a project. The city's share in the overall cost for this project is about $53,000. So that amounts to roughly a 25% share, less than a 25% share overall. Much of that has already been expended through development of the design of the project. So we just have a little bit of additional expenses that will actually be attributable to the city in the end. We did look through the bidders' qualifications on this one like we do, and did some reference checks and found them to be adequate. So staff is recommending the award of the contract to Minnesota Dirt Works in the amount of $184,664.95. And I'll turn it back to you, Mayor, and I can stand for questions.
Thank you, Nick. Council, is there any discussion? I'd like to have a motion to accept the motion awarding of the contract to Minnesota Dirt Works for 21st Street water quality improvements in the amount of $184,664.95.
So moved.
Councilmember
second.
Fulch. Councilmember Balsonic. Any discussion? Flatten, please take the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn,
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch,
Yes.
Councilmember Balsonic,
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld,
Yes.
Councilmember Lund,
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. Motion prevails. Vacation of Alley Block 134, 6th and 7th of Bailey. For this item, we will have an introduction by Community Developer Director John Hinsman, followed by a public hearing, then potentially action by City Council. John, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and City Council members. We have before us tonight a request to vacate a portion of an alleyway. This is a public hearing and action requested after the public hearing. I'll go through a brief summary of what the request is. Please note that the action tonight will require 6 of 7 council members. So with the absence of Council Member Brox, it would require unanimous approval to vacate the alley. So I'm going to share my screen here and take a look at, I'm not looking at the right thing here, actually. Don't think. Let's try this again. Okay, nope, I got the right thing up here. You're looking at an alleyway. I'm looking at the wrong screen. Okay, this is what we're looking at. The alleyway is between Bailey Street, 6th Street, and 7th Street. The alleyway is unimproved, stretches across here. There's only a portion of the alleyway that we're looking to vacate. That is the approximately 100 feet of area, which is highlighted here in orange. This is located behind Matthew Hyman's house, which is located here, who is the person asking for the request. The request is being asked because Mr. Hyman plans to build a new garage in this vicinity here, which would abut the alleyway itself and would not meet the setback requirement. So he is looking to vacate the alley itself, which is 20 feet wide. There is no city improvements in here, nor is there any city improvements planned. There are a couple of private utilities, so we would be vacating the alley, but reserving an easement over the portion that we are vacating. We have notified the public, and we have had a couple of conversations with neighbors, primarily on the eastern end of it, that had concerns about access into this garage over here in particular. That was the reason why the vacation request was taken a little bit shorter to be just the western 100 feet. So we are recommending approval of this, subject to the resolution attached. And I can stand for any questions, or you may open the public hearing at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. At this time, I will open the public hearing. Anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this? No, seeing none? Okay, at this time, I will close the public hearing. Council discussion? Councilmember Liefeld.
Thank you, Your Honor. John, I just have a general question for the vacation of these alleys. I've been noticing we've been getting a few more of these. Every year we see a handful of them. What's the purpose? I noticed there's one over between 15th and 14th, over in that neighborhood between like Ashland and heading east there. What was the purpose for this?
Sure, council member. A lot of the older plats that were recorded had a center alley that was platted between them. And the purpose was for people to have that improved and to utilize it. Over time, some of these were improved, some of them are used. In other cases, they're not. And so when we get a request to vacate or to remove the alleyway, we're taking a look at a couple of things. Number one, what's there presently? Number two, what's our public purpose into the future on it? And if there really is no public purpose now or in the future, and it's not going to cause any distress to the neighboring owners, we've generally vacated these alleyways.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Any other discussion, council?
Your Honor,
Member Balsonic?
yes, thank you. Question for John. Will his driveway for the garage be Bailey Street, or is he going to continue to the north with it?
Council member, I believe it would come from the north off of 6th Street. I do not believe he would be crossing the railroad spur between Bailey and his property, which is just east of Bailey Street.
All right. Is that railroad spur active, or it's just a right of way?
I don't think it's very active now. In fact, I don't think it's active at all. It used to be a
John,
Smead used to use, but I don't think it's active now. I think Nick turned his microphone on. Do you have any more information, Nick?
it is active. That is the spur that heads out to the Ardent Mills mill. So it passes right by, parallel to Bailey Street, and continues on.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other discussion, council?
Thunder?
Councilmember Fulch?
I was just going to make a motion to approve.
Okay. Motion made by Councilmember Fulch.
I'll second that, Your Honor.
Councilmember
Councilmember Liefeld.
Liefeld will second it. Additional council discussion?
If I could just chime in, and John, correct me if I'm wrong, I think this requires just a majority vote of the council. You had indicated this requires 6 votes. I think that might have been for the special use permit coming up later, but please correct me if I'm missing something there.
No, Mr. Faluca, you are correct as usual. I am in error on that one. That's for the special use permit. Thank you.
So it require 4 votes tonight with those present.
Correct.
Okay, thank you for clarification. Clerk Flatten, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn,
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch,
Yes.
Councilmember Balsonic,
Yes.
Member Liefeld,
Yes.
Councilmember Lund,
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. The motion prevails. Public hearing, Sidewalk Cafe requests and extensions of Sidewalk Cafes. For this item, we will have an introduction by Community Development Director John Hinsman, followed by a public hearing, then potentially action by City Council. John?
Mayor, City Council members, I'm going to put my screen on here. What we have is a request for a public hearing to include a few more sidewalk cafes. I think we're all aware of the history, the actions that we're taking at the May 18th and June 1st meeting. At the June 1st meeting, we established the first batch of sidewalk cafes. We do have 4 more that are requesting action tonight. That would be El Mexican, Hastings Social Tavern, Legion, and Froth and Cork. These are consistent with the sidewalk expanded approvals of May 18th. And I'll also go through the effect upon the right-of-way right after we go through the public hearing here. So public hearing tonight to consider the sidewalk cafe and license agreement for expansion here. What they would consist of is as follows. Let me go here. This would be really 2 expansions within the right-of-way itself. One for El Mexican, which would utilize some of the fencing for Gift Galore, their traffic barricades. This is something that we found out late today, and we'll be able to accommodate that. And then the American Legion. Those 2 items will include parking space expansion into the public street area. And I've got a couple of maps which show what a couple of these look like. You can see the social house here is just onto the sidewalk. No public barricades necessary. Everything would need to be confined privately. At the American Legion, we are looking at closing off a couple of parking spaces towards the northwest corner. These are handicapped spaces themselves to create an area for outside dining. So this will require some traffic control measures similar to what we saw on 2nd Street. We'll also have one more area on 2nd Street. This is Sibley, Highway 61's towards the west here. The area here highlighted is the El Mexican area in which a new expanded sidewalk area into the parking lane would continue. So this would be 4 parking stalls consistent with some of the other ones that you see here. So this is the plan that we have before us. So what we're looking at tonight are a couple of different actions. One, hold the public hearing to consider the liquor license expansion. The liquor license expansions would be consistent with the drawings that we have been shown here tonight. The second action would be to approve the authorization of the liquor license agreements to ensure that they have certain compliance and certificate of insurance requirements within there, and then to approve the plans that we've shown here. These plans would be for additional barricades and fencing that would be installed, similar to what we've seen out here that were done at the June 1st meeting. So this is a public hearing. You can open it at this time, or I can stand for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, John. This time I'll open the public hearing. Anyone in the audience that would like to speak, they can use the raised hand feature. Be invited to speak. Any, we'll close the public hearing. Council discussion. Council discussion. Okay, could I get a motion to approve the new sidewalk cafe licenses for Hastings Social LLC, DBA Hastings Tavern, El Mexican Restaurant of Hastings, American Legion, and Froth and Cork?
Your Honor, make a motion as stated.
Councilmember Liefeld and Councilmember Lund. Any other council discussion? Clerk Flatten, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn,
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch,
Yes.
Councilmember Balsonic,
Yes.
Councilmember Lund,
Yes.
Liefeld,
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. Motion prevails. Okay, Public Works. Tonight we have to approve the corporative agreement, easement, and long-term stormwater BMP maintenance agreement with Stemstone for East 21st Street. And we'll ask Nick to join us again.
Mayor, tonight, this dovetails into the action that the council took just about 5 minutes ago to award the contract for the East 21st Street Water Quality Improvement Project. In designing and laying that project out, one of the most promising areas that our staff determined for water quality improvement facilities happen to be in the area of Semstone's concrete plant driveways that are connected to East 21st Street. And I got to give a lot of credit to City Engineer Ryan Stensky and Assistant City Engineer John Caven for working with Semstone to carve out this space and discuss with them how things could function and get their buy-in in order for us to implement these measures on part of their property. Now, to go along with that, of course, we need their permission. And one of the things that's in the action before you here would be to have the city approve the easement agreement that goes with this. But we also have a cooperative agreement that outlines the cost responsibilities for each party. The city, of course, is doing the project. And as I spoke to earlier with the contract award, we have a relatively low amount of cost share for the whole project. Semstone, in turn, is also going to be investing in this for some of the overall work that they would have that crosses over onto their property at no additional cost to the city. So they have skin in the game on this as well, but the cooperative agreement is meant to memorialize what those cost responsibilities are. And then lastly, the long-term stormwater BMP maintenance agreement is really to solidify the fact that Semstone will be responsible for maintaining these measures throughout time, making sure that they clean them out on a frequency that's adequate to keep it functioning as intended and as designed. So it's kind of a three-part item there that we've brought together in one action, and we're asking the council to approve all of those in a motion tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Discussion.
Your Honor, I'll move the staff report to
Okay,
accept it.
Councilmember Balsonic,
This is Councilmember Fulch. I'll second it.
Councilmember Fulch, second. Any discussion, council? Please call the roll.
Oop, I'm sorry, Your
Sorry.
Honor. I did have a couple of questions for Nick.
Oh, sorry.
Is this this is a perpetual agreement then? There's no sunset on this agreement?
Correct. I believe it goes throughout time. And it's transferable to any subsequent owners. So whoever might purchase the property at some future imaginary date would also be responsible for continuing to maintain this as long as it's there in existence.
Okay, so it's perpetuity. Second question is, who is going to monitor this? Is the city responsible to monitor it?
Well, the city will certainly be monitoring it as it's adjacent to and connected to our right-of-way areas and feeding into our downstream stormwater system. However, the cooperative or the long-term maintenance agreement does place responsibility on Semstone for doing periodic inspections of it and then addressing any issues as they arise. And anyone who enters that sort of agreement with the city for stormwater facility maintenance is required to furnish a report on at least an annual basis to the city, indicating all the times that they've taken a look at it and their subsequent follow-up actions. So I think we have a couple layers of oversight there that will ensure it's going to be kept looked at pretty frequently.
And this is fairly common for the sake of the public. There are lots of agreements. I'm not sure how many more with the city of Hastings, but statewide, self-monitoring is a very acceptable kind of an arrangement when it comes to things like this. So as long as the owner of the property is honest with everything, we'll see the reports. Hopefully all good reports then. Okay, thank you.
Discussion, council. Okay, Clerk Flatten, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn,
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch,
Yes.
Councilmember Balsonic,
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld,
Yes.
Councilmember Lund,
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. Motion prevails. We have a resolution, a special use permit, tap room extension roof for Spiral Brewery. This item is introduced again by Community Development Director John Hinsman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and City Council members. We have before you a special use permit request and approval for the Spiral Brewery. This would be to use their existing rooftop. It would be limited to no more than 30 seats. You may recall that during the original approval of the permit for a tap room, there was indication that there would be a rooftop. So this is consistent with those plans that we've been seeing the last few years. Planning Commission did review this on June 8th. At the public hearing, no one spoke for or against the item at that time. The commission recommended approval of it with limited discussion. The approval itself is subject to certain conditions. One is to obtain a liquor license, which is the next requirement tonight, and then to adhere to local noise operational rules, approval of building plans, and then HPC approval. That HPC approval would take place tomorrow night. Now, this item is the one I meant to flag, which means there are a need for 6 of 7 council members to approve this one tonight. So there would need to be a unanimous vote by the council to approve the special use permit. So what are we looking at here? We are looking at this portion of the rooftop here. So not the whole roof, but a portion of it. The bottom area here shows what that would be. This area is what would be improved as the rooftop patio area. The stairs come up from the building at about this location. There would be an exit across the building, down some existing stairs to the next building at the Meyer Company, which I'll show in a second. A couple more views of what the property would look like, improved on the top of a nice area up there. And this would be their secondary access point out. So that concludes my presentation for tonight. And if you have any questions, I could take those at this time. And I think Amy Fox is in the audience. If you have any questions for her. Thank you.
Okay, council discussion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve as recommended by staff.
Councilmember
I'll
Lightfoot
second.
and Councilmember Fulch, second. Any additional discussion from council at this time? Clerk Flatten, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn.
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch.
Yes.
Councilmember Balsanic.
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld.
Yes.
Councilmember Lund.
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. Motion prevails. Along with it, we have the approval of the liquor license premises extension for Spiral Brewery. John, you want to move on with that?
I'll continue with that one, Mayor. This is a simple one. Normally, this would be on the consent agenda. Being that it was a condition for approval of the special use permit, we placed it on for discussion tonight. This is simply the permit request for the liquor license. They would need to provide certain insurance requirements for that. We're recommending approval. Thank you.
Council, I would accept a motion for approving the expansion of the liquor
Motion to
license.
approve, Your Honor.
Oh, Councilmember Liefeld?
This
I'll
is
second, Your Honor.
There you go.
Councilmember Fulch beat you to it, Councilmember Balsanic. Any additional council discussion? Okay, Clerk Flatten, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn.
Aye.
Councilmember Fulch.
Aye.
Councilmember Balsanic.
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld.
Yes.
Councilmember Lund.
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. Motion prevails. Tonight under administration, we have a presentation and approval for the 2019 Comprehensive Financial Report. This item will be introduced by Finance Director Melanie Lammers. Melanie.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. We recently completed our 2019 Certified Annual Financial Report with the help of our auditors, Bergen KDB. So tonight, to make a presentation on the results of that is Caroline Stutzman from Bergen KDB.
Welcome, Caroline.
Good evening. Thank you for having me, Mayor, members of the council. I'd like to take a few minutes of your time tonight to go through the results of the 2019 audit. We do have it's being pulled up here. Beginning in the first page, the main reason that you ask us to work with you is to provide an opinion on your financial statements. The opinion we are providing for you is what's called an unmodified opinion. That's the highest level that you can receive and not a change from what you would have received in previous years, meaning we believe those financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects as of December 31st, 2019. In addition to looking at the numbers as we went throughout our process, on the next page we indicate that we conducted our audit in accordance with government auditing standards, indicating that we consider internal control as we go throughout that process. We do have a few findings listed here. We did go through these in detail with the Finance Committee prior to this meeting, so I wasn't going to go through those in detail unless anyone had specific questions about them. All right. In addition, we conducted an audit in accordance with Minnesota legal compliance. The Office of the State Auditor puts together 7 checklists full of state statute items that we ask a number of questions about. There were no findings related to any of those items either. So then we dig into the financial analysis information, beginning with your general fund. General fund balance increased in total by about $450,000 for the year and ended at just over 5.9 million. The components of that fund balance are identified here in the chart under 2019, identifying most notably the unassigned fund balance, which is what's available for future operations, ending the year at just under 5.6 million. That amount does also represent 49.1% of your 2020 budgeted expenditures, or approximately 6 months of those budgeted expenditures. The policy that you've established for yourselves indicates 30 to 40% of that subsequent year's percentage, so you are in compliance or slightly above what that policy is for you. On the next chart, we see general fund revenues. In total, general fund revenues increased 5.1%, mostly in property taxes and charges for services as a result of an increase in levy. General fund expenditures are on your next slide here. Total expenditures increased 1%, so relatively break-even year on the expenditure side of things. A little bit of fluctuation between items just as a result of positions potentially not filled, for example, in public works, and then the turnover in general government, as well as increases on police and capital outlay items in regards to increased mill and overlay costs and items like that. General fund revenues, budget, and actuals presented on this chart. So similar to what we just saw for revenues, but including that budget. In total, general fund revenues were over budget by 0.59%, so less than 1 percentage point variance. So about as close as you can possibly get on the size of budget that you're looking at. That's great. From an expenditure side standpoint, we have a similar presentation here. In total, general fund actual expenditures were under budget 4.7%. Similar explanations as far as what some of the changes were previously. General government being under budget as a result of the administrator turnover and some conservative budgeting on the capital outlay side of things for mill and overlay projects, as well as some unfilled positions in public works leading to that variance. This chart is for the Fire and Ambulance Special Revenue Fund, so a separate fund for fire and ambulance. This is total revenues, total expenditures, and fund balance. Revenues decreased and expenditures decreased. There was a grant in 2008 that you did not have in 2019 on the revenue side of things, and then expenditures, there was some capital equipment purchases in 2018 that were not present in 2019. So fund balance increased then by 286,000 for this fund. Parks and Recreation Special Revenue Fund, again, a separate fund for Parks and Recreation is presented here. Revenues increased about 10%. There were donations received in regards to the damaged soccer fields. On the expenditure side of things, that theme follows through there as well. There were additional repair costs and hours related to those damaged soccer fields, and then fund balance increased about 60,000 for the year. And we shift gears a bit to the enterprise fund, starting with your water fund. Operating revenues did decrease here. There was an increase in rates, but that was offset by decreased usage. And then operating expenses increased with a fluctuation in pension expense. And you see at the bottom, tan and orange bars, both are operating income. One is with depreciation expense, one is without. We just touch on this from the perspective of analyzing those operating revenues to ensure they are sufficient to cover all of the operating costs, including depreciation expense. And for 2019, that is happening. You are seeing both of those lines above the bar there. Sewer fund presentation, similar to what we just saw in the water fund. As far as presentation, operating revenues increased here, about 6%. There was an increase in rates as well as base charges. Operating expenses increased 6.5%, also related to those pension expense fluctuations that I touched on earlier. Similar story in the tan and orange bars as far as those results ending in operating income for the fund and fully covering depreciation expense, with both of them being above the bar. Stormwater fund, similar presentation here as well. Operating revenues increased about 12% with an increase in rates. Operating expenses increased. Again, that pension expense fluctuation is leading to that change. Operating income was the result of that activity, and again, fully covering depreciation expense and looking at those two tan and orange bars. The hydro fund on this next slide. Operating revenues were down a bit here, about 3%. There were turbine breakdowns throughout the year, and then operating expenses did decrease. There were fewer repairs and maintenance costs in 2019, fully covering depreciation expense and resulting in operating income for the fund of about 93,000 for the year. So then the last two slides here look at tax levies, the tax capacities, and then on the next one, we'll get to the tax capacity rate. But for starters, the green bar there is the tax capacity that increased 7.7% for the year, and the levy is blue, which increased 5.4% for the year. The impact of those changes leads to the slight decrease that you're seeing in the tax capacity rate here on this slide for 2019. I'd be happy to take any questions anyone may have.
Okay. Thank you, Carolyn. Councilmember Liefeld?
Nothing, Your Honor.
Oh, you were unmuted. I was just checking.
Thank you.
Councilmember Balsonic?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. A request for Melanie Lammers. Melanie, can you send this report so we can see it? I'm looking here at the agenda item, and it was not included in the agenda item, but I think council members should have a copy of that. Is that possible?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay.
Your Honor, this is Councilmember Fulch. You're on mute.
Councilmember Fulch, go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's fine. Thank you, Your Honor. Prior to our council meeting, we had about a 40-minute conversation, and that being the Finance Committee of the council, which in attendance was myself and Councilmember Vaughn. And we heard a more in-depth presentation that was provided by Ms. Stutzman, and had the ability to ask more detailed constructive questions of staff. And I would like to say that I've been very impressed with our city's finance staff the last 3.5 years that I've been on the council. And it's wonderful to hear reassuring words from these independent audits that find just minor little, issues that they catch. There were 4, but as we talked them all through, they were what anyone would consider probably minor issues, and staff were well aware, and they were working towards reducing or completely eliminating those audit findings from future years. And so I just wanted to say thank you to Ms. Lammers and other finance related staff in the great work that you do on our behalf, and thank you, Ms. Stutzman, for your presentation. Thanks.
Okay, any other discussion, council? Okay, I would accept a motion to accept the 2019 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report.
Your Honor, this is Councilmember Fulch, and I'll make that motion.
Okay, Councilmember Fulch, I need a second, please.
Second.
Councilmember Lund, is that a second you were unmuting for?
I believe Councilmember Vaughn seconded. Second.
Okay, Councilmember Vaughn. Any other discussion? Clerk Fratton, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn,
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch,
Yes.
Councilmember Balsonic,
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld,
Yes.
Councilmember Lund,
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. And thank you to Carolyn and Melanie for your efforts. Proposed City Council workshop on diversity, equity, and conclusion. This item will be presented by City Administrator Dan Waticha. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you, Mayor. Really, just very briefly, as you're all aware, over the last 4 or 5 years, the city has put some efforts towards diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I believe still have an ongoing commitment in that area. But in light of a lot of recent social interests, 2 of the council members, Balsonic and Fulch, asked, could we have a workshop to more further discuss these topics? So that's really what's before you tonight is, would you like to have a workshop? Are there any particular parameters that you might want on that workshop, or what might be included with it? I would also point out that Derek Jagger of the YMCA and Thrive, who we've worked with previously on some of this, has said that he could help facilitate that workshop in order to help make sure that it's more than just a discussion, but there's some result or action steps that help come out of it. So that's what's before you. I can certainly stand for questions, or Councilmembers Fulch or Balsonic might have some additional pieces to it.
Sure.
Councilmember Fulch, I
Thank
see
you, Your
your-
Honor. The last year or two, I had been suggested during council conversations that the city take on an initiative that's provided by the League of Minnesota Cities. It's called GARE, that stands for Government Alliance for Race and Equity. It's a national program, and the league makes the program available to cities across the state. And I won't go into a lot of the details in regards to that, but it is a training opportunity both for staff and elected officials that they provide background information so that we can understand where we have come from as a society, and then more in particular as to what government has done to impact race imbalances. It's fascinating to listen to, and then to really understand how important it is for government entities to have strong policies, you know, in regards to and being forward thinking about how it is that what we do impacts minority populations and such. And so I would like for that conversation to go on and learn more about how it is that we could perhaps as a city take on the GEAR program. There's more to it than that, but it's a really wonderful. I've been to a couple of the trainings and personally, and I think that it's well worth it. And then also I have been to many of the Thrive meetings, and I know that there were a number of suggestions that came out of Thrive in the end that were things that the city could do to take on, and we haven't had that chance as a city to look at what some of those recommendations were and how it is and what it is that we could do to begin to implement some of those things. And so what I'm really interested in more so is what is it that the city can be doing to be more forward thinking in regards to how our policies and our practices impact minority populations. You know, separately is the issue of doing like a training, quote unquote, with staff and elected officials, you know, on the topic as background information. And I know that there are a few of us, Councilmember Liefeld, Mayor Fassbender, Councilmember Brox, who had been, in attendance of the Thrive. And so I think I know that, you know, some of us have been more active in participating in those local initiatives. And so I'm not sure if we all need to come up to the same level of understanding. I would suggest that if we talked about GEAR, that would be an opportunity for everyone to kind of get on a level foundational basis in doing that. So anyhow, just throwing out there some thoughts about how it is maybe that we could proceed on this particular topic. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Fulch. Councilmember Balsanic.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. We're not in a void in terms of, understanding and appreciating and doing things about diversity. Over the years, the council has had workshop sessions. And I think it's important to point out that our police department, our fire department, our EMS department, and our city staff in general have had workshop sessions over the years. So this is not something where we're starting out from scratch. I would, before I go any further, I'd like to move that we accept the proposal for a workshop on diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Thank you, Councilmember Balsanic. Do I have a second on the motion on the floor?
Provide a second. However, I mean, again, it's really, what does that mean? I mean, like personally, I don't.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I still had the floor. Go ahead. Go ahead. That's okay, Councilman.
You were looking for a second.
I called for her, Joe.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. Again, it would be more specifically as to what it is that we're proposing. I would just, if it's just a training just to, like understand the content, that's one thing. But what frustrates me in the past is when we have a conversation about a topic and I feel like we're all beginning to become more educated and then we don't have follow through action items that are identified. And then we continue to, strategically stay on those follow through items. And so, honest to God, I feel very sympathetic to staff right now. I think we're all really stressed when it comes to COVID-19 and the impacts that it's having to staff and us as individuals and our families and such. And so I don't feel that I personally don't want to ask anything that is far-reaching for staff. I think that it's thoughtful for us to begin to plan. I just think that we should be very respectful of just everything else that's going on in life right now as we're moving forward. And so I don't think that we should do something tomorrow, but I think that we should schedule it and make plans forward into the future. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Fulch. Councilmember Balsonic, did you want to say something else?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. This workshop would be only for the city council with some correspondence with our city administrator. We felt it was best to leave it in that narrow vein. And then Dan can do some things as necessary with the staff as we go along. I would like to thank Leah Heating, who my daughter, who's a teacher at Hastings Middle School, has called one of the finest students to ever graduate from Hastings High School for her diligence and very in-depth questions and comments that have led us to this particular point of the proposed workshop. It's citizens like this who are integral and important and valued in terms of doing things right and pointing things out that the city perhaps should take advantage of. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Councilmember Balsonic. We still need a second on the motion on the floor.
Mayor,
I made the second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
That's all right. I'm sorry. I kind of got off on a tangent there.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Clerk Flatten, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn,
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch,
Yes.
Councilmember Balsonic,
Yes.
Councilmember Lightfoot,
Yes.
Councilmember Lund,
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. Prevails. Thank you. We'll have an update on financial impact of COVID-19. Administrator Dan Waticha.
We skipped one, but we can hit that one real quick. This information really is really just meant to be informational. See if you had any particular questions or comments at this point. There's no action item on this. Really, it's a matter of there's just a lag in getting actual numbers. By the time they get into the accounting system, a lot of transactions occur by credit card, so there's another month delay on the statements. So as we've started to get a handle on expenditures related to COVID, as well as some of the just financial differences, April 2020 versus April 2019, wanted you to have that information as it became available for us and just timely for your future consideration.
Okay, thank you. And then do you want to go back to the pandemic preparedness plan? Thank you.
Thank you. This one's a little bit unique. Or maybe it's not unique because it seems that everything with this COVID has been and changing and adapting, every day. But the governor's recent executive order number 74, which came out about a week and a half ago, one of the provisions in it referred to critical sector businesses needing to have a preparedness plan by June 29th. The other piece that makes us, and the city falls into that category of critical business. The piece that makes it difficult is the state guidance on what that plan would be required to have in it is supposed to be posted online no later than today, the 15th. And at least as of 1:20 this afternoon, it wasn't up yet. So in order to follow the League of Minnesota Cities recommendation of having this adopted by the city council, there was no way that it was going to have a draft and reviewed by staff from an operational standpoint and included in packets that went out last Thursday for a meeting tonight. The timeline doesn't work. But what the League of Cities advised is that preparation and adoption of that plan could be voted and authorized by the city council to delegate that to the city administrator, myself, obviously working with staff to make sure that it meets operational needs. It's something that in staff meetings, maybe not in terms of a return to the workplace discussion, but it's something that we've been discussing in our staff meetings for the last 3 months. So it'll certainly contain things, assuming that this is consistent with the guidelines from the state, they'll certainly contain things such as social distancing, disinfection, personal protective equipment, but really it comes down to how do we provide a safe environment for our employees, safe workplace, as well as a place that's safe for the public to come and visit our buildings and departments. But with that, really the request is that you would authorize staff to prepare that plan so we can meet the deadline of June 29th. I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Dan. Council, any questions?
Your Honor, this is Tina.
Councilmember Fulch.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Dan. I understand that the league did, or sorry, I think you can find that template to use. I think it was on the Dolly website. That's where I had seen it. And I understand that it's kind of a tight time frame, and you've been working on it all along anyhow. So it's just putting into a formal template. And so I would. In a moment, I'll make a motion in regards to that. But I had a question in regards to the finances. And so it's my understanding that that local governments can apply for FEMA assistance, and I believe it's the police department who's the contact on that, for expenditures in regards to COVID-19 for additional supplies and staffing and such. And I had also looked at the guidance, and it had said that grants that were made available for small businesses so eligible for reimbursement. And so I'm curious that you're providing some of this information. I see that HEDRA isn't listed, and I understand that they're considered a separate entity. But I was wondering if you can speak to the staff is planning to do in regards to preparing for a federal reimbursement request. Thanks.
There's a few pieces to unpack in there, so let me see if I can get all of them, and if I miss something, please call me on it. One, I'd point out the city's already received 2 grants, one through the state and one federal, both to benefit the ambulance, the EMT aspects of the fire department. Those, I believe, were maybe about 18,000 and low 30,000s. In terms of other reimbursement, the FEMA does provide historically public assistance for, typically it's a natural disaster type thing, a tornado or a hurricane. And this may be eligible under that. And since the start, the county's emergency operations center has been coordinating with mostly through police departments in order to submit for reimbursement through FEMA if that's appropriate. And we've set up our website portal in order to submit those if that's the way we go forward. We're deliberately holding off because there's potentially some other funding that may be more beneficial than the FEMA funding. The FEMA funding is typically at 75% reimbursement. If we are eligible for CARES Act funding, it's at 100%. The FEMA funding on wage reimbursement typically is only for overtime. The CARES Act funding is regular hours, not just overtime. The FEMA has some pretty hefty application procedures in paperwork. The CARES Act, although we need to have some record keeping, it's extremely streamlined and almost just here's a bag of money, spend it appropriately, and hope you don't get audited. And if you do get audited, you should be fine because you did spend it appropriately and you've got some record keeping. But really, the potential on this CARES Act money is much easier to work with, and 100% reimbursement versus 75% reimbursement. So we've been holding out to see if that would be eligible for the city before we submitted anything to FEMA. That's still an option, but it looks like during special session at the legislature, they are working on and will be releasing CARES Act money to cities and counties. It's initially federal money given to the state, and then the state could choose to keep all of it or could choose to release a portion of it to cities and counties. There are a number of requirements by the federal, on the federal end, what it can be used for, but since it's a pass-through from the state could put additional requirements on or tighten up what it might be allowed for. At this point, it looks like what's being discussed at the legislature is very consistent with the federal guidelines. So it really could be very useful for the city. You had asked about, you said that none of the hedgerow pieces were on the spreadsheet, and that's really a matter of timing. That spreadsheet's through the end of April. I think those HART grants were done in May, so they just didn't show up on that sheet because of the timeline. But one of the eligible uses of the CARES Act money on the federal side is grants to small businesses directly related to the COVID and assisting with their closure or assisting with their ability to reopen. So I would expect that the $170,000, $180,000 of HART grant money that the city gave as assistance to a number of our businesses could be entirely reimbursed, but we're still waiting on it coming through the state. On the FEMA side, that's not even an option, but it's certainly an option if the CARES Act money comes through.
Terrific. Thank you for that explanation, Dan. I appreciate it. And I'll make a motion to authorize staff to move forward in preparing their pandemic plans as required by the executive order. Thanks.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councilmember Balsanic. Additional council discussion. Clerk Flatten, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn.
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch.
Yes.
Councilmember Balsanic.
Yes.
Member Liefeld.
Yes.
Member Lund.
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. Motion prevails. Thanks, Dan. We have done 4. So Dan, if you want to speak to the internal financial services part, just to give us an update what happened today.
I'm going to hand this off to Administrative Services Director Julie Flatten, please.
Okay. Julie, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. So tonight, We're asking you to authorize staff to work with AEM Financial Solutions to provide financial services prior to Finance Manager Melanie Lammer's last day of July 6th. So since Melanie gave her resignation notice, we've been working on a transition plan, and we've identified several items outside of the day-to-day operations that'll be happening in the next few months. And we believe there is not staff capacity to absorb this work within the finance department or by myself. So some of these items include the development of the 2021 budget, issuance of debt for the street reconstruction project, and finalizing the utility rate study review and analysis with Ellers. So we've reached out to several firms and are recommending that we work on a contract with AEM to provide these services until a suitable replacement can be hired. So we're still finalizing that contract, but with the next council meeting not taking place until July 6th, which is Melanie's last day, we're asking to begin this work while Melanie is still here, just for about a week. So this work we'd be billed on an hourly basis, and we've set a not to exceed amount of $6,500. And we anticipate there'll be salary savings to cover this. When Melanie departs as a new finance manager, likely won't start at the top of the pay scale. So I can stand for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Julie. No discussion, council?
Your Honor,
Apparently, Councilmember Fulch.
I would just like to thank Melanie for her, has it been 4 years of service now? Three or 4 years of service? 3, that's what I thought. You've done excellent work, and we appreciate you, Melanie, so thank you. And I'll make a motion to authorize staff to proceed in negotiations for the supplemental professional technical work.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Fulch.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councilmember Balsanic. Discussion? Clerk Flatten, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn,
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch,
Yes.
Councilmember Balsanic,
Yes.
Member Liefeld,
Yes.
Member Lund,
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes, motion prevails. And Melanie, yes, thank you for your years of service to us, and we wish you well. Council, do you have any announcements? Member Lund, you are unmuted. Is that for a reason? Okay. Councilmember Balsanic. Okay. All right, I have a couple. While several downtown establishments have created or extended their outdoor dining spaces, there are also many additional options nearby for you to enjoy curbside carry-out meals. The helpful parking, parks, and public spaces map is now on the city website. The 4th annual Make Music Day will be a live stream event on June 21st. And performances from 2:30 to 7:30. On Thrive Thursday will be teleconference event about racial justice, listening to community voices on Thursday, June 18th from 6:30 to 8 p.m. See the Thrive in Hastings Facebook page for details. In-person absentee voting starts Friday, June 26th, 8 a.m. to 4:30, either here at City Hall or at Dakota County Administration Center. Tuesday, June 16th, we have a Heritage Preservation Commission meeting at 7 p.m. Thursday, June 18th, the Public Safety Advisory Commission meeting has been canceled. p.m. Monday, June 22nd, Planning Commission, 7 p.m. July 6th is our next City Council meeting. Council, I would look to have a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved, Your Honor.
Second.
Councilmember Liefeld,
Second.
Councilmember Vaughn. Clerk Flatten, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn, Councilmember Fulch,
Yes.
Councilmember Balsanic,
Yes.
Member Liefeld,
Yes.
Member Lund,
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. Motion prevails. Everyone, stay safe.
Have a good evening.
Thanks. Have a good week. Take care. Bye-bye.